the covenant path.
My dear brothers and sisters, a letter I received some time ago introduces the subject of my talk. The writer was contemplating a temple marriage to a man whose eternal companion had died. She would be a second wife. She asked this question: would she be able to have her own house in the next life, or would she have to live with her husband and his first wife? I just told her to trust the Lord.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. About a month ago, I did the video, LDS prophets. I'm trying to read it on the screen. I'll have to blow it up. LDS presidency announced restoration of polygamy for April 2022 General Conference. As of yesterday, or actually this morning, there are 1,280 views. Now, if you scan my channel, you realize, hey, that's an unusual amount of views. Travis doesn't get that much. What's going on? Yeah, well, the church does not like the information that I put out. And yes, you're new. You do not know the backstory. As the church and I have history. And you have to excuse me here while I go through the files to do this, because this is important. I'm getting comments about, I didn't hear anything about polygamy. I knew it was coming, guys, because there is some backstory information. There is knowledge that you obviously do not understand and know about. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not who they pretend to be. Let me go over a few of the comments about it. I will do a comment reply video to cover all of you. It's been since 2017 since I was doing comment reply videos themselves. And so one of the earlier ones was from a family sharing a YouTube channel, I guess. They say polygamy is, and then in all caps, not allowed in the LDS church, and then never will be. They put an exclamation point. So they showed me. I have no clue what I'm talking about. You guys do not know. You come to one video and you think you know it all? Oh, you don't know nothing. 19 July 1840. Look it up. Joseph Smith Papers. You guys are Mormon, right? You believe the church is true, right? We're going to get to that in this one because the one lady screwed that one up. But also for women, women are not supposed to have priesthood and priesthood office, right? That's what we've all been told. 17 March 1842. Joseph Smith Papers again. Look it up. There's the talk of Joseph Smith's, and then there's the minutes of what the Relief Society sisters voted for. They voted for the name, they voted for Emma. And then Joseph Smith's talk. You'll get to a certain part where he tells them something, and you're going to drop your jaw because we've been lied to. Now you'll understand why that was not put in our Doctrine and Covenants, and we got what we got instead about Relief Society. Women are to have priesthood and priesthood office of both Aaronic and Melchizedek. But Joseph allowed the women to choose and vote for themselves. He let them run their organization. Amazing, huh? And so I guess Jesus changed his mind with Brigham Young like he did with blacks, like he did with polygamy. Joseph Smith was framed, by the way. I've done those videos. I've been doing videos for years. You are way behind. You do not know the backstory. And so here's another person. You're full of bleep. No polygamy is not coming back. Stop your lies. Oh, I'm the one who's lying, huh? Okay. Apparently you're not a good and faithful Mormon because you don't know. Let's see. Praise to God. I'm aware of you. I will get to your comments in the comment reply video. That's the meaning of the name, baby name meanings. Praise to God. Let's see. Guys, have you had a mighty change of heart? Because I'm not saying it. So much abuse. Dear God, guys. You are not true Mormons. It's obvious. And so another person, I just watched General Conference Saturday session. Haven't heard anything so far about polygamy. Probably won't tomorrow either. You missed it. You missed it. I'm going over it. We're going to take our time on this. I will again reiterate for you everything that's going on. And then another, Jean B. Bingham, been Relief Society president going on 5 years by this August, when she'll be officially released. No, she was put in April. That's why there's a difference with this one. Not serving only 3 years. Please correct. Thank you for this. The picture I got was from the internet. It's in my file system. I've had it for a while. And I've been using it for videos lately. As you can tell, I knew in advance of what was coming. You guys stayed away from the ones about the 666 conference. Has to do with the women. 180 years, 18. Number 18 was announced yesterday. Do you understand what 18 has significance with? With 666? Do we need to go back to math? to help you. And if you're like shocked, I've never known this about the church. Really? You haven't? You don't know about the inverted pentagram on the keystone of the ark of the doors of the Salt Lake Temple. You do not understand the Danites. Do you know that it was the Danites who were the ones getting Joseph Smith in trouble? Framing him, telling other people, forcing them to sign documents that it was Joseph. When the Joseph Smith papers vindicate Joseph Smith. There is a big scam and cover-up, and the church does not want you to know any of it. 19 July 1840. That clears it all up for you. Just read it. Don't be scared. Read it. I'm trying to reach innocent Mormons so that they can know the truth about the church that they've been brainwashed into. And for the concept of polygamy, it's involving grooming. It has always been illegal to practice polygamy. Joseph Smith had a whole chapter on monogamy in the 1835 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants. He always preached out against polygamy. He excommunicated members for practicing polygamy. John C. Bennett also formed an Illuminati order, Halcyon order, when he was with James Strang. You are way behind on your information. We're in the latter days, and we're in the latter days of the latter days. We've got 2 years left. And so you can hopefully see how YouTube and the church are purposely keeping you from this information. And the Danites were practicing polygamy. The Kimball family know that Heber C. Kimball had married himself and had children with a second wife in 1829. The Kimball family, Heber C. Kimball, was a practicing polygamist years before becoming Mormon. And so with the Book of Mormon condemning polygamy, was it 5 times? There's the first one with Jacob talking about Lehi's order not to have polygamy. There's King Noah and his polygamy. Oh, the Great and Abominable Church and polygamy. King Noah and polygamy. Amulek talks about being a polygamist and thus wicked. It's 4. I'm trying to think if the Great and Abominable Church. There's Korihor, who is able to deceive many women. But there was no connection to whether or not he was having sex with those women. But he was saying crime is not a crime. So it is sort of implied, but not actually spelled out. And so, yes, the Doctrine and Covenants, 1835, monogamy chapter. Do you know when it was removed? Do you know why we don't have it now? Why is there section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants in our Doctrine and Covenants and not the monogamy one? Do you know? Do you know how to look for this on Google? Doctrine and Covenants, Wikipedia. It goes over when certain sections were put in 1844 and then in 1876. And then 1922, Heber J. Grant took out the lectures on faith. Thus, the doctrine of the Doctrine and Covenants was removed from the Doctrine and Covenants. But 1876, the year before Brigham Young died, the year after, he got locked up in jail by one of his exes. One of his divorced wives had him locked up in jail. Do you think he was happy? No, he was pissed. Now read the context of section 132. I've gone over, and I've covered it in videos, Brigham Young's talks. He was pissed with the government for not allowing him his religious freedom to practice polygamy, because it's illegal. He was fighting the government. And so he and his Danites were practicing polygamy in secret, in the underground of Mormonism. It was their plot to overthrow Joseph Smith's church. 19 July, 1840. Joseph figured it out. And they went around telling people, women, oh, Joseph Smith approves of this. He's got wives too. Shh, don't tell. Brigham Young was the one doing all the sealings. He has no authority to do that. Only Joseph and Hiram. Technically only Joseph, because Elijah and Moses keys, that's Joseph's only. But Hiram did have prophet, seer, revelator status with patriarch when Daddy died. But that wasn't until 1840. And so Father Smith was the patriarch and the prophet, seer, revelator. Which, if you go through the Doctrine and Covenants again, you realize what's really going on. Who is really speaking to Joseph. And Orange White, the son of Lyman White, has his journal entry in which he talks about going to the Higby home. And he sees Brother Higby has 2 extra women there in the house. So Brother Higby says, oh, yeah, well, Joseph approves of this. Don't tell. Straight from his journal. And so he believed Joseph Smith actually was a polygamist. He trusted the word of Brother Higby, because Brother Higby had 2 extra wives, and they got to keep it a secret because it's illegal, and they're going to overthrow Joseph Smith's organization. Why? Well, it has to do with the Illuminati. The Halcyon Order of John C. Bennett. The inverted pentagram put on the Nauvoo Temple after Joseph Smith was assassinated by an inside job of Brigham Young's 12. That is on the Salt Lake Temple, the Logan Temple, the Eagle Gate. Where did this come from? Heber C. Kimball, under Masonry. he talks about going in 1824 to Canandaigua Lodge, Freemasonry Lodge, in New York, with a petition to become a Royal Arch Mason, and says he was approved, but he can't show the documents because of an anti-Mason movement that occurred. Well, the documents were preserved because we know who the Master Mason was. Joseph Smith Sr. Oops. Nobody is putting that connection together. Only me. Historians covering the church, whether they're ex-Mormon or anti-Mormon or Mormon, they don't do their job, and I'm kind of disturbed by it. There's a thing called forensic investigation, kind of necessary. Nobody does it. They find out information and they run with it and conclude from that. They do not put all the pieces of the puzzle together to find out who done it, with what, and in what room. They don't have a clue. Board game. And so, having assassinated Joseph Smith, he, with his Danites, muscled his way to exalting himself. The leadership crisis was in 1838. I'm the one who designated that title for that period of time. That was when the Danites couped the leadership positions. That's when Brigham Young took over the presidency of the 12 missionaries with only the keys of Peter. Joseph Smith has Moses keys. Brigham Young had Peter keys for missionary work, not Moses keys. Big difference. But they were not prophets, seers, and revelators. Definitely not translators, as they don't even claim it. And this was when the Utah War began, which was election fraud that started it off by the Danites, where they forced a sheriff and a judge to sign that Joseph Smith threatened them. Joseph Smith is vindicated in the Joseph Smith papers. He was in far west Missouri doing other stuff that were documented. Too far away for him to be where the Danites forced the sheriff and the judge to confess that it was Joseph in charge of it. And so Joseph Smith was falsely accused and framed within his own organization by the Danites. 19 July 1840. If you need additional information, I refer you to section 117 of the Doctrine and Covenants. The Nicolaitan Band, Secret Abominations. Yeah, that's code. You're not following the footnotes. Revelation. Yeah, well, it's been around that long. Wow. He's using code. The church claims they decoded all the Doctrine and Covenants for us. Yeah, they missed a few, like Babylon in section 1 verse 16, and they still aren't getting it right for us. They claim it's either the United States or the world. Yeah, it's the Great and Abominable Church. It's them. And with the assassination of Joseph Smith, they then went full on polygamy, in secret still illegal, they were trying to get women to join them. Women were property back then. Women did not have rights back then. If you do not understand the history of the United States of America. I mean, we're still struggling to tell the truth about black slavery, let alone the history of slavery and property ownership and the lack of human status for women as well. It wasn't until 1971 when women got the right to vote as full humans. And then there's blacks' right to vote now being considered full humans rather than a partial human. So there's been changes that if you don't know prior conditions, you're going to be living in a fantasy world about what actually has been going on. And so Joseph Smith giving women priesthood and priesthood office was huge back then, because no one else was giving it to women. Women had to fight for it. And not until 1971 did they partially get it with the right to vote and be considered human and no longer property. But the temple ceremony for weddings and connected to the endowment ceremony, both created by Brigham Young, has women as property to their husband still. Pay attention to the wording. We should go over it, since we're going to go detailed onto this. And so I may not get to the comment video until after today's sessions, just so that you understand. So praise to God. Hold on. And so Brigham Young, he claims Joseph Smith gave him authority to do lots of stuff that he wasn't given authority to do. He was a missionary. That was it. That was all. He lies. 19 July 1840. He lies. So yes, there's a lot of new people you do not understand. It's not the mic, it's the fan in the background. Praise to God, fan in the background. I do not have central air. And yes, this thing thinks it wants to just focus on me rather than the background. So I keep adjusting it so that I can see the clock. That's my clue that I need to fix the screen. And so Brigham Young had the outside of the temple redesigned for the inverted pentagram, and it was finished by January, because in January he was doing second anointings, becoming king. He was going to overthrow the United States government. But obviously he failed in that regard and had to flee the country. And so yes, there were sealings being performed after Joseph Smith was dead. And all these people were claiming and were threatened to claim that Joseph Smith approved of it, that Joseph Smith had approached them. All lies. They were hostages. If they wanted to survive and live and be taken care of, they had to lie. Do you not understand how that process works when you are being taken hostage in the sex trafficking trade? Yes, those women were sex trafficked out of the United States to the Salt Lake Valley. Polygamy is a crime. It's a sex crime. And when you take women who are victims of crime out of the country, out of state even, it's called sex trafficking. Brigham Young was guilty of sex trafficking. The church is pissed with me, and they incite you to get pissed with me. But Brigham Young was guilty of sex trafficking. Because the Salt Lake Valley was not the United States of America, even though taking him out of state was sufficient for sex trafficking. This was Mexico territory in 1847. Why is he so focused on polygamy? Is it because he's horny? Yeah, that too. Remember Xena? Yeah. Well, you youngins don't understand how washings and anointings for blessings were done prior or from the beginning. They were done naked. And so women were to wash women, men. But Brigham Young is sitting with his 12, watching Xena wash, anoint, and bless women. Those women were naked. And Brigham Young is watching. The reason for polygamy is, again, he wants to take over the world. Thomas B. Marsh said they want to take over the world, and not just the United States. And so he wanted nothing to do with the church. It had nothing to do with milk scraps with his wife. He was excommunicated while Joseph was in Liberty Jail, not while Joseph Smith was out and before it happened. Again, Joseph Smith papers. Joseph Smith gets out of Liberty Jail, and in that summer in 1839, Joseph Smith talks to the 12 specifically. And it calls them Judas. It's alluded that Thomas B. Marsh is the good man that was kicked out as Brigham exalted himself. Joseph Smith refers to that. Don't exalt yourself. You are just missionaries. See, Brigham Young doesn't have authority to lead the church in Joseph's absence. You've been deceived into thinking that the president of the Quorum of the 12 is the one who takes over the church in the absence of the president. Well, why? Yeah, because Brigham Young. How coincidental. But not supported by anything Joseph Smith said, and especially section 107, verse 22. There's supposed to be a vote by the Melchizedek priesthood holders, not an automatic in by the president of the missionary 12. But if you need an army to go up against the United States, and you're a little short on men, what's the quickest way to build up an army? Well, conversion, yes. Go around the world and convert Mormons and then bring them to Zion, which he did that too with the Perpetual Immigration Fund in 1849. But also with polygamy, which in defiance of the United States, which took over his kingdom the very next year in 1848, now became American territory, and thus became Utah territory. But Brigham Young was still in denial. He was saying, okay, fine, I don't get to have a kingdom, well, it's now going to be the state of Deseret. Made coins and everything, but was denied. He was trying to create a coded language, the Deseret alphabet, so the United States wouldn't know their plot and plans. The temple endowment that he made included a death to America with its penalty attachment to it, in case you decided to be a whistleblower. Helaman, chapter 6, verse 24, for whistleblowers. Polygamy increases population very quickly. If you don't have sufficient men per women, that was the whole point and purpose. And so the law of obedience, yeah, women obey their husband. Had to do with the sealing ceremony. Brother so-and-so, do you take sister so-and-so by the right hand in the patriarchal grip, and receive her unto yourself to be your lawful wedded wife for time and all eternity? See, receive her. With a covenant and promise that you will observe and keep all the laws, rights, and ordinances pertaining to this holy order of matrimony in the new and everlasting covenant, and this you do in the presence of God, angels, and these witnesses of your own free will and choice. You're supposed to say yes. Sister so-and-so, do you take brother so-and-so by the right hand in the patriarchal grip and give yourself to him to be his lawfully wedded wife, and receive him to be your lawfully wedded husband? What's missing for the brother? Do you see where the slavery is? Give yourself to him. The man does not give himself to you, but she receives you as the master. And so the law of obedience was tied to this, that women obey their master husbands. Women are slaves, sex slaves. The law of chastity involved polygamy. And so, with the change, after the United States shut down the Brigham Young's organization in 1887, the year that John Taylor died. He was in jail when he died, locked up. There are pictures still to this day. They're all over the internet about it. There it is. And so the law of chastity was changed to, Peter talking, a couple will now come to the altar. We are instructed to give unto you the law of chastity, which is that each of you shall have no sexual relations except with your husband or wife, to whom you are legally and lawfully wedded. Do you see how the United States stepped in to make that change? The church had to make this change. Legally and lawfully has to do with the laws of the United States of America. your husband or wife in the singular. No polygamy. The church was forced to change the law of chastity to conform and comply with the United States laws and rules in accordance with the article of faith that Joseph Smith had. We believe in being subject to kings, presidents, rulers, and magistrates, and obeying, honoring, and sustaining the law. Joseph Smith was framed. And so Nelson then went and changed it. And so that, which is that the women of God's kingdom and the men of God's kingdom shall have no sexual relations except with those to whom they are legally and lawfully wedded according to his, capitalized, law. You see what Nelson pulled in 2019. And so, Oaks, we're going to put that clip in this video also. Oaks, Trust in the Lord clip. October 2019 General Conference. Oaks gets up and starts off with a letter from a woman who's marrying a man whose wife had died, and is asking Oaks, will I get my own mansion? And Oaks replies, trust in the Lord. The audience laughs. Oh, ha ha ha. All Mormons know and understand polygamy will be practiced in the millennium. Why? It's illegal. The United States has to be destroyed. The United States still has to be destroyed. What is that destruction? Ezekiel Chapter 38. Bruce R. McConkie was in charge of putting in the chapter headings, and he put in for chapter 38 of Ezekiel, the battle of Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog were the sons of Japheth, son of Noah. Noah and his sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth. You're good Mormons, right? You go to church, Sunday school, super spreader event. Now they're covering it up so that we won't know that church is a super spreader anymore. Only going to report on Thursdays. Still in a pandemic. But this is the prophecy for the battle, the war in the latter days, that Nelson downplayed. He said, oh yeah, we were told there would be wars and rumors of wars. Yeah, and the war, which all the rest of the world knows, but Nelson would not confess to. And, praise to God, if you're listening, to answer your question, and I'll answer it again when I do the comment reply video. In the church, when Nelson and other presidents announced temples on the last session, and Nelson's expected to do more temple announcing, it means that they used tithing to pay for them. That's what our tithing is used for. We have tithing settlement at the end of the year with our bishops, The bishops are now required to read from Malachi and to read the statement from the church about the use of tithing, that it is for temples and buildings and Book of Mormon publishing. And the tithing slips say, hey, anything you give us, we have the right to use any way we want. Tithing is a protection racket that began with Brigham Young in the Nauvoo Temple. If you wanted to go through the Nauvoo Temple to be initiated with the initiatories or with your sealing, you had to pay tithing in order to go through the temple. So much for Isaiah, buy and eat without money and without price. He became the money exchanger of the temple. If you know that story in the Gospels and what the character named Jesus did. Gog and Magog is the land of Russia. And so yes, praise to God, includes Ukraine. And here Bruce R. McConkie is saying, the battle of Gog and Magog against Israel shall usher in the second coming. The Lord will come amid war. In Russia, Nelson got up in the Solemn Assembly conference and the final session announced the temples and one yet to be determined in a major city in Russia. The church gave Putin money. That's what the temple announcement means. The church has given money to those countries for a temple. And if you don't understand, Putin has oligarchs that do the business for him. But Putin has to approve every business transaction. And they require a favor, though. And so the church got exposed in May by Fox 13 News Utah's Max Roth that the church, with the 2017 rushed tax bill by Orrin Hatch of Utah, who was born poor, in his viral outbreak video battle with Senator Brown, who was saying, this isn't for the poor, let's call it what it is, it's for the rich. Yeah, but Orrin Hatch is Mormon, it was for the church. The church had formed a number of LLC corporations that were formed right around the time Monson died. Isn't that coincidental? How did all these signatures take place, Nelson, with Monson on his deathbed? That's strange. And $32 billion gets funneled into those LLC corporations, huh? And temple in Russia, huh? Do us a favor, though? Strange. Very curious indeed. Yeah. The church gave Putin money for a business transaction, and it's not for a temple. That's the cover story. So what was the money used for? Well, cyber attacks. But it doesn't really require that much money to do a cyber attack. You just need a computer and a hacker who knows how to commit cyber terrorism. Oh. I see. The war. Yeah, now you understand why Bears Ears was going on, don't you? For uranium mining. Putin's got cancer, in case you haven't been paying attention to the news. It's the whole thing about deer excrement. Apparently Steven Seagal's healing therapies, if you've seen it's one of the Wayans brothers, Steven Seagal recommends deer penis. It's a powdery thing that supposedly clears up sinuses, according to the movie. Steven Seagal, Climberman. Yeah. And so, with the war, it is prophesied that the men will die in war. That's in Isaiah. It's in the Book of Mormon. And that's where the 7 women shall take hold of one man. What are you witnessing here with this war already? You're seeing the men, for the most part. There are some women and ballerinas who are also fighting. That is awesome. But the majority of the refugees are women and children. And the men are dying in war. So far, it's mostly the Russian men, but nonetheless, the men are dying in war. Putin has escalated to chemical warfare, the white phosphorus. NATO and Biden still refuse to do anything about it. Why? Because they know this is the war. Biden is Catholic. Remember the Pope? He's freaking out, trying to get Russia and calling out Putin. Why won't Nelson call out Putin directly? The Pope does, because the Pope knows and understands. It's the Sisters of Fatima. They claim that they saw the Virgin Mary, and she told them that the Russian leader would be the cause of the war, destroying the whole earth. Putin knows this too. There's the Russian Orthodox Church with their leader. Putin knows. But he's got cancer because of all the nuke thing that went off several years ago. See, there was asterisk 45, ripped up the Iranian nuke deal. Yeah, he also ripped up the Iranian nuke, or the Russian nuke missile deal. And so Putin was doing a new test of such an experiment, and it sort of exploded, nuked all of Russia and into and apparently he's now got cancer. And so with this nuked war, the day that shall burn as an oven, many men will die. And the church knows this, because they want to overthrow the United States and the world governments. And it was my exposing of this, way back when, that the church was pissed. They were upset with my sex trafficking video and still calling women sex slaves with the temple ordinances. they were pissed. When I came out with the war, that they were premeditatively planning for 200 years. They are the Danites. They are the Illuminati. They are the Scottish rites, not the York rites of the Smiths. York rites of the Smiths are the Knights Templar. The Holy Grail, the blood line from David for the restoring king, a mortal man, mortal parents, son of man, with Egyptian gold plates. Starting to see the connection? See why the church wants me dead. Church has destroyed me, financially destroyed me. I am currently being physically threatened. The church has ordered it, and people are committing crimes against me to fulfill their order. Serious federal felony crimes against me. I just caught them tampering with my mail yesterday. It's a crime. It's a federal felony crime to tamper with the mail. And I needed confirmation that one of my letters that I was supposed to receive about my finances, which never arrived, now I know why. This is how desperate they are. Not just to keep me silent for this conference weekend, which they failed, obviously. So this is serious, people. You argue out of ignorance. You get hateful out of ignorance. Because they're supposed to be good. When somebody is telling you the truth, you're supposed to believe it. But you've been brainwashed. The church wants polygamy, and they're going to destroy the world to justify it. Handmaid's Tale. I couldn't watch past the first episode. I was too traumatized. And so, before I go for my run and then come back with the review of conference, there are 6 stages of grooming. Now, psychologists create box categories to place people in. It was the Mormon Stanley Smith Stevens who developed this. But it's where you tell people who they are, what they are to do, what they are to be. And you keep repeating it over and over again until they believe it themselves, and thus self-fulfill the psychologist's prophecy. It's a fallacious argument. It's what bullies do. You know, bully. Hey, Four Eyes, give me your money. You have to accept that you're Four Eyes and you have to give the money. Like Pavlov's dogs. Becomes a habit. Mom, I need money for the bully today. Psychologists are bullies. They do not use science. They have titles of doctor, but that's just a PhD. It is not a medical doctor. They are not medical doctors. They perform human experimentations on us. They are doing it on the mass scale and are winning in their brainwashing of the masses. And they use it through dichotomous categorization. It's where there are only two options. I would rather be Russian than vote Democrat, for example. Yeah, that whole controversy on Facebook, that was from Stanley Smith Stevens, because subsequent psychologists came up with questions to categorize people in. So I remember being on Facebook in 2014 and getting the Disney princess questions. Which Disney princess are you? Answer our question. Answer our questions. And I was saying, well, I'm none of those. This is an emotional test. I wouldn't do any of these. They're forcing me to answer within their categories, when my answer is none of the above. And so in the end, you are forced to be one of the categories from the selections that were limited for you to choose from. And they were emotion-feeling questions. This is mental manipulation through your emotions. How do you feel? Oh, that's what psychologists ask, isn't it? Yeah. It's called brainwashing. And so with sexual grooming, they created 6 stages. And this isn't accurate because of the experience with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell was the groomer, but she didn't touch any of the girls. She led them to the slaughter of Jeffrey Epstein and those who paid to play. That's where this grooming thing does not fit, because the men never groomed these girls. The girls were groomed by Ghislaine Maxwell. So understand that psychologists want you to self-fulfill what they claim. So even the Mormon, Stephen R. Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, had to correct it and add an 8th. Oops. Yeah, well, he's trying to force people to accept his categorization. And so you'll hear people in the world, in government and on the news and other places, talk about a win-win situation. Yeah, Stephen R. Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's where that comes from. Seek first to understand before being understood. There are some good precepts in there, but the overall thing is wrong, because that's not how it works. I was able to find out that, oh, well, if you've got somebody who refuses to win-win, it can't work. But Stephen R. Covey seems to assume that everybody can do this, that you don't have to compromise. And in marriage relationships, when you've got a person who believes that God wants things done a certain way, yeah, there is no place for win-win, because they think, well, you have to change in order for a win-win. You are in the wrong, you must change in order for both of us to win-win. Yeah, no. And so understand that this is designed to get the groomers to believe and accept this and then do it. Psychologists do it. They don't necessarily sexually groom, though there are those too, but it's for brainwashing purposes. That's what grooming is. That they control your actions, your belief systems, your daily routine and activities. That's psychologists. They tell you to get over and cope with trauma that you've experienced, rather than helping police prosecute and lock up the criminals. horrible tragedy that we're experiencing in our nation and with the failure of our court systems. Victims need justice, not therapy and drugging. And so one, they target the victim. Who was the target of Nelson for this general conference session for women? Yeah, 12 and up. That was his target, the women of the church. 2, the bond. I'm the president of the church. I speak for Jesus. Jesus' words you have to heed and obey. Filling a need. He creates the need in you. You are worthless. You're not me. You're not perfect. You're scum of the earth. You have to obey. You're wicked. There was even the one woman talking about a whore, as well as the woman at the well. And so that need, it's also women being exploited for their emotional changes. Women feel that they have something lacking. There's abuse among women to make women feel inferior and insecure and uncomfortable, that they're not good enough, that they have to dress a certain way, that they have to act a certain way, that they have to be in the right clubs, they have to present themselves just the right way, that they have to decorate their homes and Relief Society lessons, that presentation presents the feeling. Women are under full assault. And so you can see what they were doing with the need. Because you're not communicating with Jesus, because Jesus was created by Constantine. He doesn't exist. He's a character in apocalyptic literature, that Constantine chose that name over all other names of apocalyptic literature at the time. You know, like Hercules, Perseus, Moses, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. All of those are apocalyptic literature heroes. Samson. Constantine chose Jesus because the bishops couldn't decide. They were all set on their Christ and meaning and interpretation of Scripture. And Constantine said Jesus, and he's now going to be real and historical. The Scriptures of apocalyptic literature are now real. It's like saying, hey, the book of Revelation about that dragon guy, yeah, he's real. He's a real dragon. You have to accept it. Dragons are real. How many of you have seen a dragon? Well, there's a Komodo dragon. They're kind of cool, aren't they? Yeah, no, that's not what they're talking about. And mixed animal beasts, oh, they're now real. Yeah, that's what Constantine did to what's now called the Gospels. They weren't Gospels, they were apocalyptic literature, the book of Revelations. Mark's book of Revelation, Matthew's book of Revelation, John's book of Revelation, Luke's book of Revelation, but they didn't have those titles. And so when the church keeps pushing Jesus, they're lying to you. They're telling you that you don't have a connection with Jesus, and they're claiming they can fill the need if you just obey, conform, comply, follow the covenants of the temple, the covenant path. What are the covenants of the temple again? Obedience. To who now? Oh, Nelson changed it to the Lord, right? Well, who speaks for the Lord? Oh, the prophets do. So you now have to obey the prophets. He deceived you. And in the Law of Chastity, you got to keep that covenant. Polygamy. They were grooming you in this session. And the other Relief Society sisters and Oaks, they were all grooming you. Number 4 is access and separation. Be alone with. This was done on a mass scale. This is a mass brainwashing manipulation. This is where you can't use these. Because this is being done right out in the public view. And I told you they'd do it. They were going to restore polygamy. And so they are grooming you for it. Because we're at war. The men are going to die. The human race is going to be about extinct. Women are going to need to have polygamous relationships to rebuild the human race. And so it's not access and separation, be alone with individual women and girls, except through the verbal manipulation, generalized words, covenant path. Oh, covenants, temple covenants. See, they make you fill in the blanks. The manner in which they word it, Jesus, God, family, love, those are trigger words to distract you from what they're actually talking to you about. And so in that sense, even though it's a group brainwashing, they're hoping to separate out the vulnerable individuals to be brainwashed. And then 5, the abuse begins. That's the touchy-feely stuff. They didn't do any of that, did they? This was just to groom you, to prepare you for polygamy. If you've seen The Handmaid's Tale, and if you've seen more than what I was able to watch just the first episode and saw what was going on. They took out of context quotes to justify what they were doing to the girls. That's what the prophets do. They take scriptures out of context to justify lying to us, deceiving us, abusing us. That's how they are grooming you. And then 6, maintain control. That's sharpen the sword, from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They have to maintain their authority over women. They have to remain the presidency and prophets administration of the church. They cannot have some guy expose them and showing 19 July 1840. They cannot have ordained women want to be treated fairly and like humans. Women need to be subject, compliant, submissive, conformative. That's how they maintain control. And they will not apologize. Alright, so I'm going to go on my run, come back with part 2, the review of the conference session. Alright, just to make sure that I covered it for you, I'll say it here, whether I covered it or if I forgot. Section 131 of the Doctrine and Covenants, which was right before Brigham Young's insert of Section 132, claiming it to be by Joseph. Because again, remember, the United States is coming down on him for polygamy. And if he's the one who started it, which he did, it has to stop. But if he can claim Joseph, blame Joseph, then, as you can see, the church got away with it. Because the church had to put in official declaration number 1. And so why then do we have section 132 still in our Doctrine and Covenants, which is the Lord's law of having many wives and concubines? What's going on? Well, it's because the United States let it go for claiming it was Joseph Smith who started it. Whereas John Taylor's edition in the Doctrine and Covenants, those had to be taken out. In case you didn't know, John Taylor, succeeding Brigham Young, had talked about polygamy as well, and had put his talks in the Doctrine and Covenants, which I'm not sure why Brigham Young didn't have his in, unless they took those out, and we've never been told about that either. I had found out about John Taylor's because of the FLDS churches, the branch-offs, from the aftermath of when the United States shut down Brigham Young's order. The last year of John Taylor. So I hope that is understood. Section 131 in the Joseph Smith Papers reveals that Joseph Smith was referring to that section with a monogamous couple, saying, hey, you two, when you get sealed in the temple, will be exalted. And so that had to go if Brigham Young's going to justify polygamy as required for exaltation. So just so that you know. I'd also found Brigham Young's terminology in his documents, in his talks, that ties him to the author of Section 132. Those little linguistic tells exposed him as the author of Section 132. So we're not supposed to have it. It needs to go. We need to put back monogamy. Joseph Smith was framed. Alright, so another thing that Nelson did away with in 2019 in the Temple Endowment was remove the veil from women. And if you're thinking that we are patriarchal like Islam, well, you'd be correct. But Joseph Smith, no. Remember, he gave women priesthood and priesthood office if they chose it. He let them be in charge of it. But originally, the veil had a different meaning. It was a more exalted meaning for women, more real empowerment for women, not the I'm going to say you're going to have empowerment if you obey polygamy. And so let's take you into the Mormon presentation at the veil. All of the name signs, tokens, penalties of Freemasonry, that was Brigham Young. The oaths and covenants, Brigham Young. He was not authorized. But the veil was by Joseph Smith. The presentation at the veil comes from the Egyptians in origin. When you go before the veil, this is the Egyptian judgment scene, in case you didn't know. I'm not going to put it in here because that might confuse you as to what's going on. I'll just talk about it. But you can type in Egyptian judgment, and you'll see the scales of judgment and a person in white being presented by an animal before the scales of judgment. You'll see a woman's head on top of the scales of judgment. Then you'll see a weird creature combo beast that's there, and you'll probably see Anubis also kneeling, doing the scale thing, and there'll be a heart ripped out of the chest. Molaram Sugaram Kalima Shaktire on the scales of judgment. And you'll see Thoth writing in the book of life those who pass, and are then presented at the veil by Horus before Anubis. Not Anubis. Anubis is the one escorting the person. Osiris, who's sitting on the throne, and yes, he does have 2 wives. There's a reason for that. His brother Set murdered him. Osiris restored his throne, conquering Set, banishing him from the kingdom. He loses his exaltation, he loses his wife. The wife, according to law, has to be then given to the brother. Okay? You understand that? So it's not intentional polygamy. It's polygamy because of wickedness, so that the woman gets taken care of. Alright. There is a veil before the Holy of Holies, the throne of God. You have to demonstrate that you passed the judgment before you can pass through the veil and become God. It's blasphemy for Christians because they created Jesus, or Constantine created Jesus, and they believed it. And so God is veiled. And you have to be worthy to enter into the presence of God to be God. The name Michael, who is like unto God. That's the meaning of Michael. And so now women are veiled. See where we're going with this already? There's more. It has to do with the marriage supper feast of the Lamb at the latter days, a wedding temple sealing ceremony. I uploaded my previous segment, and I'll test the audio to mouth. So hold on a minute. We're good. Alright. Wanted to cut back on time so that we can get this up before 10. And the original concept is that the woman is veiled for the wedding ceremony. That the whole thing that Brigham Young created was kind of a screw up of that. And so when women are going through the temple, getting their initiatories, and then going through the endowment ceremony, making penalties to obey their husband or kill themselves. If you were born after 1991 and went through the temple after 1991 and your parents didn't tell you and nobody told you, that will come as a shock to you. I probably should put that picture in too. Can I find it? Or will I delay time? We'll think about that. There is an ex-Mormon couple who dressed in their robes and showed the penalties. Hilarious. I've been around for quite a while. And so, in that ceremony, that's leading up to, you have to do that before you get sealed in a temple. That's usually done on the Friday night, and then the Saturday you have your ceremony. Other places, like here in Utah, you could even do it the same day. You'd go through a morning session, and then you sit in the celestial room waiting for your room to be available while the other party is downstairs in the lobby waiting to be called up to the sealing room, and ceremony takes place. And the manner in which the woman comes before the veil, she too is veiled. And you do all the names, signs, and tokens thing. No. The woman demonstrates that she is worthy to enter into the presence of the Lord. And the Lord parts the veil. She takes him by the hand, and she enters into the Holy of Holies, the presence of the Lord. And who is that presence of the Lord, women? When you are getting sealed, your husband. Your husband is veiled, you are veiled. This is part of the wedding ceremony. Church doesn't want you to know this. This is why you need to be veiled. Because you are becoming a goddess. So see how mankind has screwed that up? And so the veil of the temple becomes symbolic of being the bride to the Christ. The Christ is not Jesus, the man like Moses. He's Horus of the Egyptians. He's restoring the kingdom of his father. And you do this by vanquishing evil and getting married before you can be coronated as king on the throne. It requires a wife. You cannot do it as a single man. You have to be one, together, sealed, to become the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And so the wedding supper feast of the Lamb at the latter days temple, yeah, there's a woman involved. So even though they say of the Lamb, he's getting married to somebody. Understand? So man and woman, symbolically representing giving birth to the future Christ, the bloodline, the Holy Grail, who is to restore Joseph Smith's church. The church, i.e. the temple, is the bride, and it's God's temple, the man like Moses, who restores the throne. So there's symbolism there as well. So woman and house are equivalent. Man and God are equivalent. So the house of God, wife and husband, goddess and God. See how the temple is symbolic of the sealing relationship between man and woman. Okay? So queen and king. Alrighty. So we got that covered. And so remember, all that extra stuff in the endowment was created by Brigham Young to enslave and for polygamy. So let's go over the conference session. They were grooming you for polygamy. Alright, so yeah, my internet got shut down 4 minutes before. I was just barely uploaded the second session. And boom, internet goes down. Oh, they were waiting. They were, again, threatening me. Don't do it, Travis. But yeah, they've shut down that other video to bring your missionaries home. They have that power over the world. Alright, so Oaks. He's the one that starts it off, trying to explain why he wanted to silence women in conference. If you remember last year, October conference was going to be canceled for the women's session on Saturday. And instead of coming out and saying, oh, don't worry, we've got things set up and planned, trust in us, we've got something planned for April 22. Would have been simple enough? No. Instead, they come out and say, hey, we're canceling the women's session for October conference. People freak out. I do a video. Women should keep silent in church, by the redactor of the author of Paul. And so they bring it back. And then I get a death threat from Nelson. And then a couple of weeks later, Holland goes out to speak in West Jordan, gives me a death threat too. They were pissed. But yeah, he's now trying to claim that, oh no, we had this all planned. The Saturday session is whatever we want it to be. No, it's always been the priesthood session. I've checked. It's always been the priesthood session. There's always a priesthood session. There is never not a priesthood session, and Nelson took it away for October's. He took away the high priest group, and now he took away the October Saturday session for priesthood, and tried to justify it by saying, oh, well, we're putting the women there and canceling their traditional session that Monson was the first to make it part of conference. And 23rd September 2017, the sign in the heaven from Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. That Joseph Smith translation correctly moved verse 5 to verse 3 to be part of that sign on that day. In the heavens, in the likeness of things on the earth. And so, yes, there is significance to the primary president becoming the Relief Society president. And so now Oaks is trying to say, well, we're going to do whatever we want now for the Saturday sessions. And it could be other groups. We can choose. They're canceling women's voices, regardless of their excuse. There's no more women's sessions for the celebration of Relief Society. Nelson canceled them. This year, there's no BYU Women's Conference. Nelson canceled it. You guys are not getting it. They want you silent. They're just placating you. Alright, so Oaks in October 2019 came out with Trust in the Lord for polygamy. That's the code word now. Trust in the Lord equals polygamy for them. And so the kids thing, trust in the Lord? Oh my God, stay away from the kids. They are grooming the kids for polygamy too. This is how dangerous they are. And that was after Nelson made the changes in the temple for 2019 with the change in the Law of Chastity. Alright. 2021, council, forced to have it. Alright, so because the church refuses to tell us the truth about the United States shutting down Brigham Young's order, refusing to tell us the truth about the 19 July 1840 talk by Joseph Smith, saying that Brigham Young is Judas and will murder him with his 12, which, John Taylor and Willard Richards were the only ones left in the room. They were part of Brigham Young's 12. That's strange. But they claim they didn't. If only Joseph Smith were alive to get his side of what happened, maybe we can figure things out. Yeah. Okay. So, they're purposely going to use this war to exterminate the majority of men of the world, so that polygamy will be required to restore the human race. Just so that you understand, Handmaid's Tale, it's coming. Church paid for it and profited from it, using tithing to do so. Tithing is a protection racket. It is not a donation. Because when you don't pay tithing, what happens to you? You get punished. You can even get excommunicated. Well, they typically don't, but you won't get callings, you won't get priesthood and priesthood advancement, you won't go to the temple, etc., etc., etc. You get punished for not paying tithing. It is not a donation. You don't get punished if you don't give a donation. Big difference. It's called a protection racket. It's a crime. So then Nelson talks. The first talk, she thanks Nelson for his prophetic leadership. He has never once prophesied anything. He is not prophetic. But what she was doing there was a twist of definitions. Because Oaks, in the Saturday second session, had everybody swear a oath of loyalty to the administration. And Nelson is prophet, seer, revelator, and president of the church, with only the keys of Peter, not Moses. Yeah, that's what she was referring to by prophetic leadership, because they claim he has the title of prophet. But he has demonstrated no fruit of his calling. And translator? Oh, it's a good thing he doesn't claim to be a translator, because he sucks at it. The chief cornerstone of the cornerstone? Oh my God. Read the end of 19 July 1840, and you'll see exactly what I've been telling you this whole time. Cornerstone, capstone. Joseph Smith calls it topstone. And notice they keep using let God prevail in your life? Oops, no, wrong translation. That's the white supremacist translation. It's Yah, the Hebrew God, Prince of God. That's the Son who is to restore the throne. So Jacob, usurping the birthright blessing from Esau, his brother, now has the birthright blessing for the bloodline of the future Messiah, who, according to the text, is Moses. That's what the whole thing is set up for. Moses. Technically, Genesis is a separate book, and it's leading to Joseph as the guy. Again, each author had a different hero character, messianic character, different names. And Constantine chose Jesus over all the other names. So if you watch my Sunday school lessons, I've got the playlist on the home page. Get properly educated as to what's going on in Scripture. This is my turf. It's my field of study, my education, my experience. I am the expert on this subject matter. I have done what no one else has done. I've made decipherments of languages and made discoveries that no one else has done, even with their PhDs. The second talk, a woman said the church is true. She was referring to a woman who asked, how do I know the church is true? That's the wrong question to ask. Because the church is a building. It's a structure. And that's not what you're asking, is it? It's the wrong way of thinking. And so this is how we need to correct that concept. Precepts are true or false. The church either exists or it doesn't exist. The Egyptian church doesn't exist anymore, it's extinct. But the precepts from the Egyptian documents, they're either true or they're false. See how that works? And so Jesus, his precepts are either true or false. But Jesus, as a person, either exists or he doesn't. And Constantine created him, so he doesn't exist. But the precepts that are quoted from the character named Jesus are either true or false. And I've done videos multiple times showing you, yes, they are true. Sometimes they need to be translated correctly, but they are true. And so she's the one who brought up also that obeying the doctrine is happiness. And that was very cringing for me because I saw Handmaid's Tale. Because that's what she was alluding to. There is only one law. That's love. And so to point out other stuff like covenant path, keep your covenants, obey, conform and comply, yeah, that's what Handmaid's Tale was all about. Is that the women, this isn't a post-apocalyptic period. Women need to be submissive and conform and comply because the world was destroyed because of wickedness, and therefore people need to be obedient. They are forcing obedience. Whose plan of happiness was that? In Mormon doctrine? Theology? Lucifer's. Forced agency. You are not free to do what you want. You have to do what you are told to do. Because that's the only way you'll be saved. Because if we give you your freedom, you're going to do bad things. Like take away the agency of others and force them to do your will. This is what Lucifer's plan is all about. It's self-contradictory. All right. So then the Relief Society president gets up and quotes from Nelson. He does that talk that Nelson gave, and he said, "Together we'll help prepare the world for the coming of the Lord." Jesus is not real. Who is he talking about? He's talking about the millennium. Chapter 38 of Ezekiel. The war will slaughter the men, leaving a great majority of women, and the Lord will come amidst war, after the men are all dead, to usher in polygamy. You need to understand that when they speak, they're talking about polygamy. They're grooming you in the manner of speech. And so then she goes on to talk about, ask trusted sources for answers to questions about your covenants. Covenants? You mean temple covenants? Obedience? Chastity? Polygamy? The Relief Society president, on her way out, is grooming like Giselle Maxwell. And the Lord is Jeffrey Epstein. See, he doesn't exist as real. There are several things that could happen. He could be like the Wizard of Oz, where he's a regular person playing the tapes that are shown on the holographic screen, or as in 1984, he's Big Brother, who's always portrayed, but nobody ever sees him, and people just assume he's there. That could also be what they do for Jesus. Or they could just come out and say, the president of the church is Jesus. I am him. Or, who knows what they've got planned, but just understand they're going to manipulate you to force you into polygamy. And they'll justify it because the men are dead. Then Renland, oh dear God, he promoted idol worship. Say again, Jesus is used as an idol statue for Mormons to worship. He is the image of Mormons to visualize. He doesn't exist. Constantine created him. It's in our first vision. It's an abomination. And here you have Renland telling the women of the church to practice idol worship. Listening to the Holy Ghost. Notice he doesn't talk about the Spirit. The church has removed the Spirit from the church. What is a Holy Ghost? A personage of Spirit. The Holy Ghost is a organization of spirit matter. Spirit is a separate entity than the Holy Ghost. It is the communications method for the Holy Ghost. And if you do not understand that process, you're going to go down incorrect belief systems and make many errors and potentially hate other people rather than love. Trying to get them to obey your will of what you believe the commandments are all about, which it's only about love. What are you doing? Why are you telling people to do and be and say and act and behave like you, or how you want them to behave? That's Lucifer's plan of happiness. And so the false doctrine of, well, if you're doing bad things, you can't hear the Spirit. No, you can hear the Spirit always. It's there. It's everywhere. It's Spirit. You're just not listening. Listen, and you'll hear it. Heed what it tells you to do, and you will see the consequences of good. If it's a bad spirit, then you'll see the consequences of bad, and you shouldn't listen to that voice ever again. You need to find the true, good voice. Inspiration, revelation, whatever you want to call it. So if you're told, like Noah, to build a boat, you build the boat. And for the Noah story, yeah, the floods came. His family was saved. Our extra scriptures say that he tried to tell the people and warn them, but they wouldn't listen and drowned. It's that simple. Not complicated. You either love or you don't. And so he, as a prophet, claims that there's not much about Mother in Heaven. Watch my Sunday school lessons for this year. I've gone over that with you. She's everywhere. The Bible's just not translated correctly. He says that reason and speculation do not give you truth. Yeah, he's correct with that. But leaves out science. And he says that only listening to the Spirit, Holy Ghost, gives you truth. But then he goes on to talk about him being a medical doctor, which is a field of science, which has laws of science that he must follow, otherwise consequences will result. But he doesn't tie that in. He compares the voice of the Spirit to science, and that's not correct. Science is the process of word to finished results. Spirit, finished results. You got to finish the results. The Spirit is not the end all. And the church will not teach us correctly on that. It's from Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28. Uses the science of vegetation theory to explain it to us. Seed to fruit. Faith without works is dead. Seed without fruit is dead. See how simple that is? If a seed doesn't produce fruit, it's a bad seed. Throw it away. It's no good to you. Don't keep hoping that it'll eventually grow at some point in time. It's been 50 years. This seed, I'm having faith that it'll grow. No, it's dead. Throw it away. Get another seed. And also he threw in the prayer idolatry that I talked about in the other session. We don't pray to anybody. Not God, not even Heavenly Mother. So he's deceiving you. Oh, we don't pray to Heavenly Mother. We pray to Heavenly Father. No! We don't pray to anybody. We tune ourselves to the Spirit to hear inspiration and revelation as to what to do. The fruits, the consequences, will inform us as whether that is good or bad. If it's bad, don't do it again. Dear God. And some bad things you can tell from the inspiration. Oh, you want me to murder somebody who didn't do anything to me? Yeah, bad. Don't listen to that. When it teaches you to love another person, to help them, and not be rewarded for your helping them, pretty safe in assuming that that's going to be good consequences. But yeah, there are bad people who will want to exploit that and cause harm to you for trying to be a good person. And so yeah, there's that one other woman who talked about wouldn't it be nice if everybody conformed and complied to being good. Handmaid's Tale, dear God. She was talking of grooming you to have your agency taken from you to practice polygamy. And then threw in the covenant path. Yeah, that's obedience and chastity, which is polygamy. And he said testimony is a gift. Dear God. No, testimony is the consequences. When you produce the fruit, the consequences, you now can judge whether the word, the seed, was good or bad. You are a witness, a physical witness of the physical manifestation of the word. And you can now testify to that physical witness. Spiritual witness is only a seed. You haven't even planted it to even see if the seed is good or not yet. And then he threw out the blasphemous claim that apostles are special witnesses of the name of Christ. What is their name? Jesus. But what is the real name? Amen. So he lied. And he lied about lying. And so he goes on to talk about how Satan blocks us from Jesus. Guess what he just did? He blocked us from the name of Christ. He was guilty of the false doctrine he was presenting. Dear God. And so then he does the polygamy grooming, using trigger words for women who want to be strong, who want to be powerful, have a voice, and says that strength and power comes from making temple covenants, obey, and chastity, polygamy. So, dear God, what a nightmare. Alright, it's almost 5. So, let's see if we can get this going. I gotta put in the new Relief Society chart, so I've got to make it. Yesterday morning, I was not allowed to make a picture. I had to shut down my computer over and over again to get that hacker off my computer. Dear God. You do not understand why my voice is so powerful and so threatening to them. 19 July 1840. They are trying to murder me, and I'm trying to save your life and warn you of the danger of them. Alright, so to know, yeah, MS-37, I covered that yesterday. But yeah, MS-37, you're supposed to warn in advance. You're not supposed to warn after the fact. Oh, by the way, you weren't supposed to touch that stove. You need to listen to the prophet. Yeah, 18. I did cover this, didn't I? 18 is 666. 3 sixes. And the 180th anniversary, they did this on purpose. So we'll cover this again, and it's in the video that everybody's watching. That everybody is confused. I didn't hear anything about polygamy. Do you now see how it was about polygamy? If there's anybody still listening, and that Lucifer is behind all this. Benson was the one who changed to a 5-year term. Prior to that, I did the video. No. Benson changed it to a 5-year term. He knows. He's the one who said Joseph Smith is going to be a false prophet because the Constitution will not be saved in Washington. And so Emma Smith, no, she wasn't part of Brigham Young's Relief Society. There was a huge gap. Brigham Young didn't even want the Relief Society. It wasn't until polygamy was a big issue and the United States was coming down on him to stop it that he then established the Relief Society, so that they can be a voice against the government. Yes, we are told to read a script. I mean, this is my own. Polygamy is good. Polygamy is great. I'm making up a poem off the top of my head. And so, understand that these aren't the actual numbers. This isn't the 192nd General Conference. It's the 89th. Because Heber J. Grant organized this church in 1923. So 1924 was his first conference of his new church. And he made it a Christian church. He turned Joseph Smith into a Christian. He covered up church history because you guys have heard the Arizona woman who did a thesis paper on the 1922 secret meeting of Mormon intellectuals. Oh no, church isn't true. What do we do? Prophet and Heber J. Grant was already on top of that. He'd gotten rid of the Doctrine and Covenants the year before in 1921. Did I say 1922 previously? In 1921, he got rid of the Doctrine and Covenants. 1922, the intellectuals gathered together and said, oh no, church isn't true, and tried to talk with the prophet, Heber J. Grant, about it, which he wasn't the prophet yet. The church was destroyed. From Wilford Woodruff to Heber J. Grant, there was no administration. There was no president of the church. The church was living in denial and in rebellion against the United States. They would not accept that the United States shut them down. And so all those presidents are asterisks. They are illegal. They are not justified. So Heber J. Grant started it. Nelson is number 11. And so I'm not sure what that means for the women. I think that they can still claim from is it Eliza Snow? Was she the first one in 1966? Let's bring it up because we definitely need to restore the picture now that we have a new president called. Well, there's the picture. We'll use that one maybe. Yeah, because it's got the 6s. And yeah, Eliza R. Snow, 1866. She's the first Relief Society president under Brigham Young. Because with Emma, it ended with Emma. When Joseph Smith died, that was it. She didn't continue it. Brigham Young took all the women away, but granted, it ended with Joseph Smith's death. And so, yeah, many of these original women were a part of the original Relief Society. And so with Brigham Young taking them away, yeah, Emma didn't go with Brigham. I wonder why. And so technically this is number 17, not 18. But the church wants it to be 18. They want it to be 666. Because that's the keystone symbol on the Salt Lake Temple. They know they're evil. They know they're taking over the world. You have Oaks going to Virginia, lying and covering up what really happened with the early history of the church, saying that the United States took away our religious freedom for polygamy, which was against the law. These guys are just pure evil. So yeah, I can put the new Relief Society president's picture in that position and use this in that. I've already got another picture for the thumbnail, just so that you know.